Folks, let's continue our discussion on career pathways in geotechnologies, shall we? Another reason why I'm so passionate about this is that I do believe that this is an opportune time for us to seize the moment, if you will, because there are 5 converging forces that are acting to make this the ideal time to step into geotechnologies as a career, or else build your geotechnology skill set from maybe a few years or a history, a decade-long history that you might have in geotechnologies. First of all, it's geo-awareness. The general public is becoming aware of issues that you and I have long cared about: water, energy, climate, population change, natural hazards, crime, and so on. So these geographic issues are becoming more pervasively aware and in the public consciousness. Secondly, geo-enablement. The general public, other folks outside of our own comfort zone, our own disciplines, are now becoming enabled to use some of the tools that you and I have used for a long time: remote sensing, satellite imagery, maps, geographic technologies, GPS, etc. Also, the geotechnologies themselves have evolved so that we have cloud-based software as a service, meaning that we can share information and not just data, but models and procedures, workflows, etc., to grapple with some of these vexing, complex issues that I mentioned earlier. Also, citizen science, which has been around for 100 years or so, but now people can actually easily map their citizen science collected data. Ordinary folks out there collecting data on trash, birds, invasive species, etc., being able to map that now in these powerful web-based geographic information technologies. And finally, storytelling. Now, maps have been used to tell stories for thousands of years, but now we have a set of tools, data, procedures together to easily be able to take audio, video, sketches, text, etc., with live web maps. Base maps, yes, but also thematic maps on watersheds, on routes, on population, on transportation routes, greenways in your community, and so much more, and tell your story about your local issue, about your regional, about your state or province, about your nation, about your world, in compelling, easy to use, and powerful, shareable stories with maps. So those 5 forces, I believe, are making this the opportune time to step into geotechnologies as a career, or again, to further your own career in geotechnologies. Now, I really believe as we go forward, the stool of geoliteracy, or geographic literacy, can be thought of with these 3 main components. These are fundamental, I think. It's not just the skills. And under skills, it's not just the GIS-y skills that are important. It's the organizational skills, the communication skills, the dealing with data skills, the inquiry, and so on. So skills is an important part, but it's not just the techie skills. Also, content knowledge. If you're creating a set of maps and producing a set of analyses on climate, you need to understand how climate works. So you need to have a content knowledge, deep and rich storehouse. You don't have to be necessarily an expert if you get people that can advise you on your set of maps and analysis that you're doing. But you need to have a basis for what you're doing. You can't just mash up a bunch of layers and call it good. And finally, the geographic perspective. We in the geographic community have a certain way of looking at the planet, right? We look at things in the geographic way. Now, I know some chemists, and they say, Joseph, chemical bonds, that's what unites us. That's really fundamental. Without chemical bonds, we're nothing. Well, true. We look at the world in geographic terms. Why does a certain highway have a certain kind of land use? Like a lot of these old apartment buildings are now existing. Oh, they used to be old motels. Why? Well, because that was the main route out of town before the interstate highway was built, for example. So we look at the world geographically. Why are things moving the way they are in terms of weather patterns or land use or population change? So the whys of where, again, is very important to what we do. So the geographic perspective, the skills, and the content knowledge are all important here. Now, why GIS? Well, I've touched on this a bit already, but name some areas of concern. And you and I could have a discussion over the next few minutes, few hours even, few days on why we've got some vexing issues on the planet. Complex issues that increasingly affect our everyday lives. They're intertwined. They are dependent on each other. They influence each other. And these that I've got listed here on the screen are just some of many issues that we could chat about, right? Transportation, sustainable agriculture and tourism, natural hazards, etc., water quality. All of these issues, I contend, have a geographic component and they can be better understood and solved and grappled with the application of geographic information systems, or GIS. So there's two ways of thinking about GIS in your career. As a GIS analyst, a GIS manager, a program, or something else where GIS is specifically in your job title or more commonly in your list of duties. GIS is not that common to be in a job title, but it is oftentimes in list of duties that someone would employ. Also, as someone that is not GIS centric in their job, but they're a business manager, or they're an epidemiologist, or you're a biologist, or a planner, or a geodesigner, or a forest ranger, or somebody like that, that you actually use GIS, or you should be using GIS every day, or at least a lot of times on the job. So a GIS in that case is a fundamental tool and a way of thinking, and one of your primary tool sets on the job. Now, there are 5 key trends. We could have a debate on these, and you might come up with a good argument. Many of you are probably thinking, well, Joseph, these 5 are good, but what about... Well, yeah, let's have a discussion about that. But I contend that these are 5 of the key trends. You may debate on whether they're the top 5, but 3D GIS. The world is a three-dimensional place, and we need to be able to look at things and grapple with problems in the three-dimensional world. Also, interior spaces. Looking at the world, we've done a fairly good job over the last few decades in developing data sets that help us to look at watersheds and biomes and cities and transportation networks and so on. But what about interior spaces? How do we use geographic information systems to help us understand, for example, when an emergency medical technician crew goes into a building? How do they know where the fire escapes are, or when they need to go rescue someone on the 3rd floor in some back office somewhere? How do they know how to get there? Interior spaces, and also how do we plan smart cities where we have interior spaces where people can actually thrive in? So that's a big part of GIS. And also, speaking of big data, right? The city of Los Angeles, folks, they're putting in 10,000 of those smart gas and electric meters per day. So think of the big data that's coming in where these things are sensing 24/7, right? Big data that's coming in from these things. Also, mobile and web apps. Oh, and back on big data, citizens as sensors, right? And also the other sensors that are out there. GIS becoming a nervous system for the planet. So we've got loads of data coming in that we need to grapple with. Mobile and web apps, right? GIS is evolving into the cloud, and how do we deal with that? How do we enable people to go out and map things in their community, in their municipality, etc., and bring in that data and analyze it and map it? Also, there are increasing application areas. There's different disciplines where GIS has traditionally not been a major part of, business, health, etc., and now it is, because people are realizing the value of geographic information systems and that geographic perspective. Also, countries. There is an increasing amount of geographic information systems in all countries around the world. So it's no longer just a few countries, but many countries. There's really no country that is not embracing GIS in some level, either in their nonprofit organizations or in some of their government agencies or in their businesses that operate in those countries. So different disciplines in different countries, different organizations. It's very exciting this time. But I would like to keep in mind as we move forward with this discussion, David Orr's quote here. Now more than ever, we need people that can think broadly, and who understand systems, connections, patterns, root causes, how to think in whole systems, how to find connections, how to ask big questions. That's key. Asking questions and being inquisitive and curious about your world, and how to separate the trivial from the important, which is all the more important in our big data saturated world. So David Orr from Earth in Mind, 1994. So thanks for being with me. There's more to come, so stay tuned in the next part in our series on career pathways in geotechnologies. Thanks.